let's get on to critical race theory, because this is the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life. And it's like, it's like giving somebody poison and then they're happy to drink it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's the wildest shit I have ever seen in my life. If you're just from a, I think this is a social insurgency that's happening right now. And just from an insurgency standpoint, what you don't do is piss off the majority of people. You don't accuse the majority of people. Say that this is I've heard other commentators say this before, and it's kind of a nuanced take, but the idea that, let's say, all white people are bad, or that America is founded on whatever the fuck, 1619 theory bullshit. It was still white men in Congress and the White House that ended slavery. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't because black people were enslaved and started a lobbying agency and convinced people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's not how it worked. Men, particularly white men, realized that this is bullshit. And a lot of them thought that from the beginning and just didn't have the power to change anything, and they stopped it. Now, that doesn't excuse America's national shame or anything like that. But it does show that this the proclivity people have to put people in groups and then blame the group, corporal punishment, as it were, like that, is what anti-racists have been talking about for hundreds of years. And now that is their primary strategy.
Yeah, and Ben, are you a parent?
I am. Yeah, I have 3 kids.
I am too. So yeah, I've got 2 kids. And this is why this in particular topic bothers me the most, is I don't want my kids going to school learning from somebody who's opinion-based, because critical race theory isn't really coming from facts, and most of it would be, if it is to be taught in schools, by white people with some form of guilt about their own race, versus bringing in, an educated black man who can walk you through slavery. To me, the textbooks say it all. And if you're looking at slavery and somehow you think, man, that was a pretty good idea, chances are you're a fucked up individual anyways, and there's no changing your thinking. What is your stance on this? Because I'm sure we probably lie in the same camp.
It's sheer garbage, obviously. I mean, listen, I send my kids to private school because, frankly, I wouldn't send them to public school. Given the predations of the NEA and the AFT and all of the restrictions that they have in terms of the curriculum. But it's gross. I mean, the thing to understand about critical race theory is that it's not just a theory, right? It has what they call a praxis component, meaning that it is an activist idea. If you're not participating in the activism, you're not fulfilling the theory. So it's not merely like, okay, we're going to teach you about this particular perspective in school, and then we're going to show you all the problems with that perspective. Instead, it's everything must be seen through this prism. So the prism of critical race theory is essentially that racism is in the air we breathe, it's in the water we drink, it's in every institution that surrounds us, and it's inescapable, and it inevitably benefits people who are white. Right? People who are white are secret beneficiaries of all of this. Even if you think you're not a beneficiary, even if you're really poor, even if you had a really tough life, you're a beneficiary of the system that was created to establish white supremacy as the racial hierarchy in the United States. And the only way to be considered not racist is to be anti-racist, right? This is what you hear from Ibram X. Kendi. There are not 3 categories. Normally, when you think about racism, you think about 3 categories, right? You think there's racist, there's not racist, and then there's like activist. Right? But according to Ibram Kendi, there are really only 2 categories. There's no such thing as not racist. Either you are racist or you are anti-racist. And if you're anti-racist, this means that you have to not oppose racism. You have to be in favor of racism in order to destroy the structures of racism, right? You have to be in favor of what some people have termed reverse racism, for example. Any institution that promulgates inequality is in essence racist. Now, this is really stupid. Okay, the notion that any institution that ends with unequal results, the institution itself is bad, that's every institution human beings have ever created or lived under. Right? There is never a system anywhere in human history where everybody ends with a completely equal amount of money, ends with a completely equal distribution of resources. That's not the way anything has ever worked. Forget about race. Just like if you had an all-white class, it wouldn't work that way. There'd be a bell curve of performance, for example, with regard to only white students. But,
you mean like in England for fucking 1600 years?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you have winners and you have losers. Every society has people who are doing well, people who are doing poorly. What United States did, because of its system of classical liberalism, is it said, we're going to treat you as an individual. So now you individually have the ability to rise or fall. The left says, because those individuals don't aggregate equally among the groups, right? Which is always going to be true, right? You can draw lines like take, for example, criminal justice. 99% of people in jail for violent crime are men, right? You never hear anybody who's in favor of quote unquote criminal justice reform be like, you know what? This is just sheer sexism. This is the sexism of the system, right? This is the evil anti-male sexism of the system. Instead, there's a recognition like, well, if guys commit more violent crimes, then probably they should go to jail more often than women do, right? But in every other system of American life, the idea is if you don't end up with equal outcome, this is because the system is broken and it needs to be torn down. And if you are not involving yourself in the tearing down, then you are part of the problem. And so there's this push in classrooms. It gets simplified down to white guilt, but it really does get pushed on white kids. You are responsible for the system. Only you can alleviate the problems in the system. And Shelby Steele talked about this 2 decades ago in an excellent book called White Guilt. He said, really what this is about, this isn't about like Black Americans pushing this. This is about guilty white people trying to reestablish their moral authority by telling people they are the only ones who can fix the bad systems of America. So give them all the power.
Right.
Yeah, I 100%